All right, here we go. Hey, will of the gods I am. And I'm here talking with Sean Gill. Today we're going to talk about depression. Um, Sean, why don't you tell me a little bit about who you are? Just give me a blurb. This is all I should have asked all these questions earlier so I could introduce you, but I will get better in the future.
Yeah, no problem. So I am a professional musician. Um, and when you're a professional musician, you wear many hats. I play in bands, I teach, I write, do all sorts of different things. I have a degree in music, but I grew up as a metalhead. So yeah, I'm a metalhead with a degree in music. I guess that's the bullet point.
Okay, cool, cool. I don't like asking people their top five favorite bands because that's just a ridiculous. But what are you listening to right now, and what are your favorite genres of music?
Genres. Okay, that's a little easier. I'm uh, prog metal. It's probably my big spot. And a lot of the stuff I've done myself is in that genre. Jazz. Play a lot of jazz. That's actually my degree is in jazz. Um, boy, and pretty much everything. I go through my different moods. It's hard to pick, specific genres. I will say that I'm not like a real divider of genres. Crust, punk, grunge, hardcore subgenre. I don't get that deeply into a
The
lot of
certain
these things.
labels that are attached to it, the
Yeah, yeah,
sub genres.
yeah.
Um, what are a couple bands you've been listening to lately, though?
Um, Lately, I have been listening to a lot of Fates Warning, one of my favorite bands of all time.
Okay.
Um, and I've actually been listening to a lot of jazz just because I've had some gigs and stuff. I've been working on that. Um, So, classic West Coast, Miles Davis, Wes Montgomery, that kind of thing.
Okay, cool, cool. Today I am wearing my Guar t-shirt.
Oh, there you go. Perfect.
Rest in peace, Odorous.
Yeah.
I've been
That's an experience to have. A guar show is something that you should do at least once in your life.
Oh yeah, and it's just a ridiculous. You want to get soaked in blood and cum. It's an interesting fact that, well, of course, after Odorous died, they did have a replacement singer, a lady, I can't remember her name and everything. They kicked her out of the band for being too much of a drunk. And if you know anything about Guar, that's kind of like,
Yeah.
you guys are from deep space and you smoke a lot of crack.
Yeah.
That's like the whole gig.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
But okay, so yeah, that'll be the metal part of the show for the moment.
sure.
Um, Depression is the topic today. Why don't you tell me a little bit about your past struggle with depression?
Um, it's come and gone over the years. I mean, even probably ever since I was a teenager. I'm 45 now, and a lot of it's been tied up with music. Pretty early on from when I started playing guitar, music became part of my identity. And being an artist is a really hard thing to do that way because you feel like so much of you is contained in your work and you put it out there and people don't like it, or even worse, they ignore it. So then that sort of just feels like a personal attack and you feel worthless and like you don't have any value. And then you start saying that to yourself. And instead of it being other people thinking that you don't have any value, you start to think that you don't have any value. So that's kind of the general, I guess, form of depression that I would have is I would play a gig and there wouldn't be anybody there. And I just feel crappy about that. Or I'd put out a new album and, after a couple of days, it's crickets,
Right.
and I just feel like, what's the point? Why am I doing this?
Right. So I've kind of general depression.
Hmm.
I do go back, and we talked the other day a little bit about, you mentioned specifically how it was funny how you previously thought that, when the statement of all your bullshit comes from your childhood trauma.
Yeah.
It took,
Yeah.
decades to realize like that is a very true statement. I have worked in caregiving for 20 years and I've known that, all our bullshit comes directly from patterns we learned when we were young and
Hmm.
we keep repeating them until we do different. Um,
Yeah, and that's prior to being playing guitar and getting into music, my early childhood experiences, I learned that I had to be self-sufficient and I had to do everything by myself. And that kind of turned into I can't rely on anyone else. I can't ask anyone else for help. So if things don't go right or if I don't know how to do something, I've just got to keep beating my head against the wall until I either get it or I'm forced to give up.
Now, what was that specifically from the home situation? Because I know, like, when I was 9, my dad died, and my mom was working graveyard at the psych
Mhm.
center, and so I was a little lone wolf, less to fend for myself.
Yeah, definitely. It was, my home situation, it was, I was lucky. Things were pretty good. I know my parents loved me. They were both around, but they were really young when they had me. And they didn't know what they were doing,
Right.
And being an only child and growing up, being a child of the 80s, kind of being a latchkey kid, both parents working, kind of on my own to do things most of the time. And it was kind of an era of if, as long as I came home at the end of the day and I wasn't on fire, bleeding, or in the back of a cop car, everything must be fine.
Yeah, for the most
You
part,
know?
I remember
Yeah.
those days. It's too bad that a lot of kids will miss out on that these days. Actually,
Yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, it did lead me to places where the depression would develop and it would come up and I would have difficulties. On the other hand, I have a lot of resilience to get through things. So, I've always thought like your strengths are your weaknesses, and it can be both good and bad that I had to be self-sufficient
right?
like that.
Yeah. And of course, but part of the double-edged sword is that you are so resilient. But I know we do a lot of things. We try to do them on our own,
Hmm.
and then especially when it comes to depression or dealing with issues, obstacles in our life, we're what's the word? We're hesitant to bring it to others because we don't want to put our own bullshit onto people. I know that's been one of my biggest things in seeking help, reaching out, um, is that, I know people's lives are hard, the universe is chaos, and they got their own bullshit.
Yeah.
So putting that on them has been a very, but I mean, friends are friends.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely had that experience where, feeling like I had to do everything myself led to being really utterly unable to ask for help. For various reasons. And to some extent, it's also damaged other relationships I had too, because I felt, well, if I have to do everything by myself, you should be able to do everything by yourself too. And in some situations, if I had to help somebody, I'd get kind of mad, like, why can't you figure this out? And that's harmful to your personal relationships to kind of feel
Well,
that way.
definitely, I've had that. My expectations upon other people and what they
Yeah.
should do and how they should behave.
Hmm.
I've definitely come to over the years, everybody's got reasons for the things they do, and we all make up very good reasons in our own minds for the reasons we do the things we do,
Hmm.
even though, once it's under the microscope, it's just ridiculous what we're doing.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about what age did you kind of start noticing you had a depression? I mean, not being able to label it,
Hmm.
but knowing that something was off.
Um, the first time when I was 17, 18, I was a senior in high school, and I just felt awful about the way my life was going. I felt like I was being left out of everything. And really that drove me to oddly ask my parents if they could take me to a psychologist,
Okay.
which is a very weird thing to just kind of come out and say that I need to do that. But it was also very strange that my parents were totally supportive of getting me that, but also like really never asked me about why, which is really bizarre.
Right. Looking back, yeah, that's
Um, but that was kind of at a time I was about to graduate high school. I had all these ideas about what I wanted to do, and certain things were just kind of falling apart. And I think sort of, I didn't consciously know this, but I think I'd finally gotten to a point where the tools that I learned to survive with when I was 5 or 8 or 10 were not working
right.
because I was a different person. And I didn't know, how to frame it that way, but that was the case. And I kind of at least realized that I don't know what I don't know, so I need help. Um, and being someone who was really reluctant to ever ask for help, I don't really know what actually drove me to the point where I finally did. Um, Maybe it's just luck that I was in a place like where I would choose that instead of choosing some other more detrimental coping, like getting into drugs or self harm or something like that. I feel like my circumstances in my life, I was very lucky that I've always kind of leaned, even though I have a hard time asking for help, I will eventually ask for it instead of doing something even more detrimental.
Right.
And I
Understand.
chalk that up to just mostly luck, really.
I got to give your 17-year-old self kudos if he was that cognizant of that, he knew something was wrong and he knew that, like, hey, I needed to reach out to a psychiatrist for help. I
Yeah.
mean, that's huge. If we could, I mean, if every 17-year-old would do that, I mean, the world would be a much better place. Um, and that's actually, let's talk about the counsel. So you
Hmm.
then went into counseling.
Hmm.
What was your expectations going in, and then what did you realize coming out?
Yeah. From what I remember of it, I think my expectations were I have questions and I want somebody to give me answers. Very cut and dry. I've always had what I call Spock brain. I'm very logical. And, at the time, did not delve deeply into my emotional side. So I just kind of wanted, I am seeking a professional who will just be able to give me answers. Do A, B, and C, and things will be better. Um, I didn't go very long, maybe 4 or 5 sessions. And by the end of it, it was kind of like, I think I just got to a place where I could accept the way things were and just kind of at least start to see a little bit of like my internal existence was different from the external world. So the things that were making me depressed were external, things that would happen to me or things that other people would do didn't mean that there was something wrong with me.
Right.
Um, Unfortunately, I think because I didn't go very long and I don't know, maybe I was just too young to really get it. Um, I kind of got over a little bit of a rough bump and then spent the next, 18 years kind of snow plowing through the rest of my life, um, going up and down into phases of being depressed and not, and kind of never really catching on. Oh yeah, I did something before that helped. Maybe I should try that again. It
Right.
took me a long time to get back to that place.
Yeah. Well, I know, like we mentioned the other day, talked about people's expectations going into counseling is kind of like, medication and antidepressants is, everybody's looking for a miracle pill. They're
Hmm.
looking, when you go into counseling, I've had buddies that the counselor is supposed to tell me what's wrong with me
Yeah.
and tell me how to fix it, when that expectation is very unreasonable.
Yeah,
Um,
it is. That when I did finally get to a place where I realized I needed to go back to counseling, or that at least trying it was a good option for me. Um, this time, the counselor very flat out right off the bat was clear, like, the problems you have, you're still going to have. The bad things that happen are still going to happen. We're just going to work to have a better set of tools to deal with it,
Right.
you know?
To make it less shittier. That is the
Yeah.
goal.
Yeah. The shitty things are going to happen, but how you respond to it, you can control that.
See, I don't have a very I mean, I don't think a lot of people have a very good relationship with counseling. Um, but it does, I know it does help. My experience with counseling was, of course, like had a bunch of trauma when I was early in my
Hmm.
early childhood. At 13, I was diagnosed clinically depressed. They tried to throw antidepressants at me. They tried to put me into counseling, but I was born in Pendleton, Oregon, a very small town of
Hmm.
16,000 people. And my experience with the counselors was not very good because they just didn't have it.
Yeah.
They didn't have the experience. They don't have the knowledge that we have now. Very outdated, antiquated ideas. I was very oppositionally defiant towards it. So
Hmm.
that doesn't help. Your
Yeah.
parents force, instead of, I wish I had the cognizance to go ask for counseling and go into it willingly versus, my mother forcing me into it.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. That's, that's, treating youth is such a different thing. If I could go back in time and talk to my 15-year-old self, I probably wouldn't listen to me anyway.
oh no, kids are stupid.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I can definitely say that the approach to counseling has changed a lot over the years, and there's really a spectrum of it too. Sometimes my sessions are about my deep dark traumas of my past, and sometimes it's like life coaching.
Right.
It doesn't all have to be about a crisis. Sometimes it's just about, I, prior to getting my current counseling, I, read some books about happiness and bringing joy to your life and here and there, and it kind of feeling like my life is okay, but it should be more than that,
Right.
you know?
Okay, well, talking about depression, I wanted to talk about a couple statistics, and these are
Mhm.
from the WHO. Um, 1 in 5 Americans live with some type of mental illness. 50% of all mental disorders start by the age of 14. Women are 2 times more likely to suffer from depression. Highly developed countries have higher rates of mental disorders. You said you had a podcast on technology and everything
Mhm.
like that. Why do you think that is?
I think humans are just not, our evolution has not gotten to the point where we are really capable of coping with a high tech, fast paced, information bombarding system. It's built around, especially in America, it's built around making money, and it's just not conducive to feeling like a human being
Right,
sometimes. And I'm hoping that the recent shift in with all kinds of people quitting their jobs and being fed up with it and stuff, I hope that continues. People talk about work-life balance,
right.
and we've, at least in America, I don't know that we've ever had
No, I know I've
that.
I've completely had an imbalanced work life uh, experience, and I completely agree that I think a lot of things also, as in we're so abundant in everything we have, and we're
Mhm.
so distracted from the things that actually give purpose and meaning.
Yeah,
Family,
that's
friends,
yeah.
experiences.
Hmm.
China, not China, but Japan has one of the highest suicide rates in the world. And I
Hmm.
think that is because they are so disconnected from each other and they're all stuck in the technologies.
Hmm. Yeah, that's been a big part of my growth in the last couple of years is to be actively engaged. So much of what we do is passive. We watch TV, we just kind of sit there and we take it in. listen to the radio. We do whatever we're doing. We go to work and we just go through the motions. Like we're not really even there.
No.
And it's actually pretty hard to make yourself be actively engaged in whatever you're doing. But if you can do that, I found for me, it really helps me find either little moments of joy in anything that I do, or just to be able to be focused for a while and not be distracted.
Right. And I do believe because we are so saturated with entertainment, with music, everything that is targeted to engage us on an emotional level,
Hmm.
we have become overly emotional creatures. I mean, it's that quote, was I depressed because I listened to pop music, or did I listen to pop music because I was depressed?
Hmm.
Personally, I was depressed because I listened to grunge music, and that was very depressing. But like I said the other day, I think the grunge gave me a different perspective on the world, where for the longest time I've thought, in any situation, am I the asshole, versus you see it blaming the external world for my problems.
Hmm.
So that's it. Um, okay, back to stats. Major depressive disorder is the most frequently diagnosed depression. Over 264 million people live with depression right now. 80% of those who sought treatment showed improvement. I think that's a huge note. I mean, because I know so many people who have not sought treatment for addiction, mental illness, depression,
Hmm.
and how are you supposed to get better if you never seek out help in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah.
But then I think there's still a lot of stigma attached to mental illness, addiction, and recovery. Um, I think we talked a
Right.
little bit about you overcoming that.
Yeah, I mean, and that totally goes hand in hand with, the American way of, work hard, climb the ladder, buy a nice car. Hand in hand with that is the idea that if you fail at something, then there must be something wrong with you.
Right.
And if you can't fix it, then you don't have that worth, or you're not worthy of some success or another because you couldn't do it by yourself. This American exceptionalism idea of pull yourself up by your bootstraps and just work hard
Right.
and everything will go your way. And that's a bunch of bullshit.
Oh yeah.
And
For sure.
um, it just reinforces that idea that we're all on our own.
Right. Which of course then caters to the sense of being overwhelmed.
Hmm.
It's literally your atlas crushed by the world.
Yeah.
Okay, what was it? 30% of people who have a major depressive episode receive no treatment. Um, where the fuck was I going with that? So I think I wanted to talk about, we talked about the other day how you have technically not been diagnosed by a professional, right?
Correct. Yeah.
But I mean, you seem to like a pretty with it guy to understand what's going on, and you can use the internet.
Mm.
Um, that's one of the biggest problems I think today, is not understanding diagnosis, symptoms, um, with people, what they have. I
Mhm.
mean, if you had an STD, you get it checked out before you go spreading it around to people, right?
Yeah, that's, I think, one of the hard things about mental health isn't there isn't always an obvious acute thing to focus on. If you break your arm, it's obvious,
Right.
and you got to go get it fixed. If you have the flu, it's pretty obvious. With mental health, it can be really slow and simmer in the background for so long that you haven't noticed. You're like the lobster in the cooking pot. You sat there and you didn't notice it get as bad as it is.
Oh yeah, I've definitely had that situations where you put it off, you put it on the back burner, and it just it comes up and bite you in the ass. One
Yeah, or
thing
you
I
or you live with it long enough that it seems like it's normal. It's like, okay, I'm angry and unhappy with my life, and it's been this way for so long, so that must be the way it's supposed to be. You know?
right, and I think that's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, and but of course, I don't know, man. Sometimes I think some people were born to sing the blues.
Yeah.
One thing I should have done long time ago,
Mm,
since trying to educate the peoples, signs and symptoms of depression. This is also from the NIMH. Depression, signs and symptoms, persistent, sad, anxious, or empty mood, feelings of hopelessness or pessimism, irritability, feelings of guilt, worthlessness, and helplessness, loss of interest in pleasures, hobbies, and activities. I feel like that's the big one where if you have lost interest in anything pleasurable and your hobbies and activity, I feel that's a major sign of depression.
yeah, yeah, that seems to be, everybody has down days. You're gonna have an off
Right.
day, whatever. But when you stop doing the things that you actually like to do, or you get angry at the people you love when you normally don't, or like for me, before I went back to counseling, it would kind of be a cycle. I'd be down for a day or two, and then I'd feel okay. And then I'd be down for a week, and then I'd feel okay. And then I'd be down for 2 weeks, and it's like, okay, you know, going through that cycle and sitting in that sadness or anger or anxiety for that length of time, clearly there's something more than just having a bad day.
Right. And I know prolonged depression will eat the cortisol up in your brain and it'll
Mm.
actually shrink your brain.
Hmm.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Moving or talking slowly, feeling restless or having trouble sitting still, difficulty concentrating, remembering or making decisions, difficulty sleeping, early morning awakenings or oversleeping, appetite or weight changes, thoughts of death or suicide attempts. Now, I know we mentioned the other day you've never really had suicidal ideation,
Mm-mm.
but you kind of put it right that you could understand where that perspective was coming from.
Yeah, like when we talked about the other day, I said, when I was younger, I thought suicide was stupid. And then as I got older and wiser and more aware of my own internal workings, I can really understand why someone would get to that point. And I've kind of like you were saying, I didn't look down into the abyss, but I was kind of back away from the hole and like I know where the hole is.
Right.
you know.
Um, yeah. I think what was it? I'm going to do an episode on suicide here pretty soon. I think
Mm,
that's one of the major things we, especially with what's going on. Suicide rates are just skyrocketing, addiction rates are skyrocketing. I
mm,
definitely think it's a subject that needs to be addressed that I don't think a lot of people are.
yeah.
And I completely, I've struggled with depression, suicidal ideation. Like I can completely understand why many people choose that route.
Mhm.
Um,
And it's not like weakness of character ever.
there's many reasons. I mean, and it's um, yeah, but it's that's a hard one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so uh, and then also depression can cause aches or pains, headaches, cramps, digestive problems without clear physical cause and or that do not ease even with treatment. Um, I'm a big fan of Hermeticism, and the first rule of Hermeticism is all is mind,
Mm.
mentalism. I think this is a huge where your mental state affects your physical state. Have you ever kind of felt that or had issues with that?
Yeah, certainly. I've added meditation to my regular routine, which has been good. And very early on with my current counselor, we talked about just being being aware of your physicality when you're talking about something, and that happens a lot when we talk about something that was very traumatic or stressful to me in my past. She will stop and point out to me that I've hunched up my shoulders and closed in my physical presence in the room as we talk about those things. So it's very I have to be very aware of having physical reactions to those emotional memories.
Right. And I think that all ties into the mind, body, spirit.
Hmm.
We also
Yeah.
talked about how a lot of people, coping mechanisms, um, most, a lot of individuals don't even realize they're using coping mechanisms for the emotional state they're in.
Hmm.
So the individual who automatically reaches for drugs, alcohol, um, and doesn't even recognize that it is a coping mechanism. I think that's very prevalent out there for a lot of people.
Hmm.
But also, okay, so tying into meditation, of course, I highly recommend meditation. And that actually is a good segue into what are some things that have worked for you to make your life less shitty and that have directed your path to into more healthy behaviors and a positive mindset?
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, like meditation has helped. Having regular counseling, just even just to check in, has helped. One of the biggest things is just being able to find joy in small things. And it can be I step outside and smell fresh air and look at the trees because I like trees.
So being present.
Being present, and that's, you hear some people, especially here in the Eugene area,
Oh yeah. Oh
the
yeah.
hippie types are like, just be man. And that's not really how I think it works. It's real active process
Right.
to do that. You really have to be concentrating, you can't just be, you have to actively be engaged with what you're doing. And
Right.
that's, step outside for a few minutes, get some fresh air. um, I like coffee a lot, and I'll make Turkish coffee. I don't know if you know anything about that, but it's a fairly involved process.
Okay.
So, even just standing at the stove for 10 minutes paying attention to this fancy coffee making process and being actively engaged in that is just it's for me. I like it. And it can just, at least momentarily, kind of turn off some distractions. Um, and it just helps to have those moments, to know I can kind of turn on those moments when I need them. Um, you know, some people think that your happiness is going to be a huge eventful thing, and bad things are going to be huge eventful things. It's not really, often not that. They're just little bumps up and down. Um, Another thing I do is I have this thing posted on my wall, um, sort of my manifesto: start the day well, be actively engaged, release physical tension, move every day, and do something. That was something I got stuck on a lot. Is like I work at home most of the time, so if I don't have something to work on, I just kind of let myself get sucked into YouTube videos or something.
Right.
So being able to kind of be actively aware of, like, oh, I don't have work for a client right now, so I should get up from my desk and do something that I want to do.
Right.
The other big thing is, I think the biggest thing, um, has just been learning, sort of when I hear an internal voice, be self-critical, to check and see, was that true? And have I said something about myself? Is it even true? Is it useful? Where is it coming from? Kind of that, part of meditative practice is the idea that a thought or an event and your reaction to it are two separate things.
Right.
So that's a lot of still what I do when I have some negative thought pass through my head. I go, do I really need to listen to that? Does it really mean what it's stating? I'm This failed because I'm terrible. Put the brakes on that for just a second and say, well, probably not. Um, and also, related to that is just to be forgiving of yourself. If you have a bad day, it's okay. You're still going to feel what you feel. You're still going to be mad. You're still going to get upset. You're still going to have anxiety. One of the things I used to do all the time was compound that. Like, I would get angry and then I'd be angry that I was angry, you know, or I'd be depressed that something didn't turn out well, so that I'd be more depressed that I was down about it. You don't want to compound that for yourself.
Right. Now, I want to touch back on that. You were talking about you making a coffee and everything, and I think that's what
Mm-hmm.
the Taoists refer to as of being of one mind.
Mm-hmm.
You have laser light focus,
Mm-hmm.
the entire world, and this, of course, especially as a musician, when you're
Mm-hmm.
focused on something, the entire world falls away, time ceases to exist.
Yeah, yeah, that's other in other terms, being in the zone.
Right.
And when you're doing something, and I've experienced it two ways: either 2 hours passes and I haven't noticed it's been that long, or actually more common for me is that like a half hour will pass and I'll feel like it was 2 hours. Like,
Right.
oh, I did a lot in a half an hour because I was in the zone.
Right. Of course, we have to balance out what we're being in the zone on. I mean,
Yeah.
I've spent many a night where 12 hours passes by on Fallout 3 and
Yeah.
nothing was accomplished at all.
Mm. That's an interesting point. You were talking about people's coping mechanisms and stuff, and it's, you know, not just drugs and alcohol or something like that. I'm a gamer myself, and sometimes I, yeah, sometimes it's a coping mechanism that I
Oh,
want to be somewhere else and be someone else. So I'm gonna go play that game for
it,
5 hours.
it's escapism. I mean, what is
Yeah.
it? Most of what we do is escapism from the
Mm.
reality of
Mm.
existence.
On the other hand, you also can't beat yourself up if you really do want to play for 5 hours and have fun, and it actually is fun. Don't kick yourself in the ass afterwards because you didn't do something that you think would be more useful.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, that's the one. Is just I just know that for the majority of video games, I feel it's an escapism. It does not promote a healthy lifestyle. Like anything, we take it to the extreme. It's not like, how many people I've talked to have been like, it's like gaming can be detrimental and just as much a harmful addiction as drugs. And you have people say, well, everything in moderation. But it's funny because these are never the people that do it in moderation.
Yeah.
That remind me of the one thing. The older I've gotten, um, I've realized that all the Facebook positive life memes are true. We all know that person that was on Facebook. They constantly post life reaffirming pictures and everything like that.
Mm-hmm.
Usually they're the person where they're posting those things and not applying them to their life.
Yeah.
But they are very true. Like you said, you have your mantra,
Mm-hmm.
um, and everything. Also touching on forgiving.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
for not only forgiving others for what they've done, um,
Mm-hmm.
where forgiveness, I've definitely learned, it's never for the other person.
Yeah.
It's for your own mental health, your own well-being. So you can say, no matter what this person has ever done to me, I have to let it go, get it
Mm-hmm.
away so I can move on. And I have found, of course, that the hardest thing for most people to do is to forgive themselves of what they've done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Especially, because we are, it's true, like I said, we are our own worst enemy.
Mm-hmm.
We are the bane of our own existence.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
So often one of the negative things that I've said to myself so often is, well, I should have known better.
right.
And I know that I learned that really early on when I was like, 5 or 6 years old. I had experiences that taught me, well, I should have known better. Well, no, I was 6 years old. How would I have known?
Right.
Even as an adult, I've never done this before. How should I have known? We can't predict the future, and we shouldn't look at the past as if we should have been able to predict what would happen.
Right. There's a lot of uh, people hold their parents to blame for a lot of things,
Yeah.
especially in childhood trauma. But I mean, how many people had parents where their parents raised them to the 100% ability, and knew exactly what they're doing, and set them up for the best possible future.
Yeah. Right.
Because most people I know are still running on this is the whole, like, we most likely, we have a 7 million years ago we had a common ancestor with the chimpanzee. As much as we'd like to think that we've come so far beyond that, we're still just monkeys eking it out here in the chaos, and your parents were doing the same thing. They were out there flinging
Hmm.
their own shit, trying to figure it out, and it's just a kind
Hmm.
of vicious cycle, but there's
Yeah.
plenty of
Yeah.
blame to go around.
Yeah. Yeah. And in a way, you really can't blame anyone. That's another, part of my process has been kind of holding two ideas at the same time and saying that, like, my parents didn't know what they were doing and they didn't provide things that I needed. And yet at the same time, that's okay.
Right.
I'm not blaming them for that. I'm just sort of, my counselor calls it radical acceptance that, this is the absolute reality of the thing, but you're not, necessarily passing judgment on that. I'm not judging my parents for that. I'm just kind of recognizing I didn't get all the things I needed, but blaming someone isn't helpful for that.
Right. And you're not bitching about it.
No.
Just as the reality of, like you said, you and your counselor, is that radical acceptance of reality is,
Mhm.
I've had conversations with my mom, and my dad was a 3 pack a day smoker,
Yeah.
overweight, didn't exercise, and in the reality of it is, you chose a partner, wasn't the best partner, and in the middle of the night he had a heart attack because he smoked 3 packs a day, for 15 years, and died. That's just the facts of the situation.
Mhm.
um yeah, like you said, there's enough blame to go around, honestly. um we are more to blame for our own problems. We were technically adults at 18, and we've made every choice since then. You can only, if you want to blame, you can literally only blame your parents for so much, and then you got to
Yeah.
put that burden upon yourself.
Yeah, and ultimately, I think, it's good to get to a point where even the word blame is not really the right word for any of it.
No.
Just, again, that radical acceptance of these things did happen the way they happened. And the only choice you have is accepting that and trying to move forward with some better sense of, doing something different or behaving different or changing something the next time around. Not, certainly can't change the past.
Right. Okay. I want to make sure we're still doing all right on time. Don't get cut off here. um what are some obstacles you feel that you are still encountering today, and then what behaviors do you do on a regular basis? I would know we've probably hit on this a couple times,
Mm. Yeah.
that keep you moving forward.
Yeah, well, the having those moments to take for myself in the meditation I keep doing, being able to kind of disconnect my internal self from the external world has been the biggest step in this process. That, um, my counselor used the word intrinsic value. Like, I have intrinsic value just by being alive and being me. I have value. The rest of the world might not think so, but that's not relevant to how I live my life.
Right.
Um, but that's kind of the constant battle, though, is that I'm an individual and I have to interact with the rest of the world. So it's always, a lot of what got me into counseling in the first place was sort of professional, being a musician, being an artist, and just kind of struggling with trying to find success in that kind of a work environment. And that's still the same. It hasn't changed.
Right.
But my ability to kind of look at my interactions with the world or successes or failures and not take them personally, not think that they are judgments on my character,
Right.
um, has been sort of the biggest step forward. Um, it's still hard to be a professional musician and make a living. Um, it just my perception of it has changed. That those things that are outside of myself don't matter that much.
Right.
You know,
And
they don't tell me who I am.
they don't, that's right. It does not, the external world does not define you. Um, and it's definitely, after working in recovery homes, doing AA programs and everything, the serenity prayer is a great reflection of that. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change
Mhm.
and the courage to change the things I can.
Yeah, I'm
We
a
have,
big fan of Stoic philosophy,
oh yeah,
the Greek Stoics, and a big part of that is being able to recognize what you can control and what you can't. And if it's something you can't control, you just push it aside or, don't worry about it. If you can control it, to some degree, there's, how much control do you have? Um, one of the books I read compared it to playing tennis. If you're going to play someone in tennis, you can't control how good they are.
right.
So you just have to not worry about that.
Well, I think that's really hard for a lot of people, especially with, social media and how interconnected we are these days. What's
Mhm.
going on in the world, that really, I mean, that literally fills up most people's lives.
Oh yeah, and the one thing in the modern world that I hate the most is advertising.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, even prior to the internet, advertising is basically designed to make you feel bad about yourself.
Yeah, it wants you, it's to, hey, you're a piece of shit, your life is not good enough, you need this.
Yeah.
And I just spent a year out in 6,000 miles. The big one that just drives me insane is the commercials on the gas pumps now.
Oh yeah.
They have, yeah, the screens, and as soon as you start filling up, that commercial just kicks in. I think this is, we're being saturated, but I think we're in a really crazy transitional time. I think the Mayans were right. 2012 was a death cycle. Um, and but it's going to be interesting because, like, we're talking about technology. I mean, all this technology is external now, but here in 15, 20 years, it's going to be right straight to the dome.
Yeah,
It will be interesting.
for sure.
All right. I feel like that was a pretty good conversation.
Yeah.
Did you have anything you wanted to plug or?
If anybody's interested in seeing what I do musically, you can go to guitarshawn.info, info, and links to everything I do is there.
All right, cool. I had a couple promos things I wanted to promote for a healthy lifestyle. I don't have pictures or anything like that. Um, Squatty Potty. Have you ever had the wonderful of experience of using a Squatty Potty?
I have not. I have no idea
You
what that is.
Okay, so I recommend everyone go to the Squatty Potty Unicorn video on YouTube. Squatty potty is something that the Chinese have known for thousands of years. They poop in a hole. It lifts your feet up off the floor. Of course, like here in America, we're so entitled, we literally, have to sit on a ceramic throne to take a shit, and it's not good for us. So get a squatty potty. It'll help you, not only to you, but also I recommend. Have you ever had the joyful experience of using a bidet as well?
I have not, no, but I would like, I think I would advocate for that, just for the environmental aspect of it.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go. You double hit it. You get the squatty potty and you get the bidet, and I guarantee you, you never poop so good. And we live. I feel, I see people who have never had a bidet or used a squatty potty. It's almost savage when you think about it. It's savagery. We are barbarians still. Other than that, Costco membership. Do you have a Costco membership?
I did. I think it's expired by now, but
Okay. Well, I do not believe you are an adult until you have access to or have a Costco membership. It'll save you so much money, plus all the supplements. Personally, I buy my mini supplements. I don't know if you're a big supplement fan. We don't get all the minerals and vitamins we need, especially here in the Northwest. This is a reason why Kurt Cobain killed himself, had depression.
mm,
We have a lack of vitamin D. So I get all my supplements from Costco. It's wonderful.
all right.
Do you partake in any supplements?
I do not. No.
I would highly recommend, and like I said, pretty much everyone here in the Northwest has a vitamin D deficiency,
Mhm.
and vitamin D is a necessity to fight depression.
Mhm.
That's what we get from the sun. So I definitely they have vitamin D gummies. You know that we're still children. We got to get all
Yeah,
the gummies and everything.
right.
But all right, man. I want to thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, you bet. I'm glad to do it. You know, if I can help someone else out just by saying, "Yeah, I get mental health care." It's cool. You
Well,
know,
that's the
it's a
thing.
good thing.
Also, one thing many people, one of the thinking errors, it's I'm unique.
Mhm.
Um, I've realized, there are billions of people. There have been billions of people throughout history. At some point in time, someone has been through the same shit that we've been through.
Mhm.
It may not be the totalitarian total of our lives, but at some point someone's lost someone's been depressed, someone's had a bad marriage.
Yeah.
The human condition has pretty much been mapped out, and we have never been alone.
Yeah. Very true.
Also, do you believe in aliens?
I believe that it is likely that there is other intelligent life in the universe. I believe it's unlikely that they visited us.
Okay. um yeah, that's a fun one to think of.
Yeah.
Also, I should have talked about it more. Do you ascribe to any religion or spirituality?
No, actually, if we're being entirely open and honest, I'm an atheist.
Okay, that's cool.
And I do my best to live a science-based life.
Okay.
That's where I put my trust in things, I guess.
Now, I totally recommend people believing in science. It is a real thing. But science gets a lot of things wrong.
Science is a tool.
Yeah,
You know, it would be wrong to think of it as a belief system because it's always changing. We're always learning more. We're always learning new ways of asking the
right,
questions. So yeah, people get a little upset that, oh, scientists say this, oh, and then they say something else. Well, information changes, knowledge changes, and science is a tool for examining the universe,
right.
not a set in stone belief system that gives you all the answers.
See, now where I come from, I've studied some ancient religions,
Mm,
Eastern, mysticism, and I totally believe that there are probably aliens. They've probably been here. Humans are probably star-seeded, like we maybe didn't originate on this
mm,
planet. I believe in probably that there are most likely dimensional beings as well,
mm,
and that when we have called things divine, it's just a science that we can't understand. So I'm a big fan of the in the Thor movie where he's talking to the people and he says, "What you call magic, we call science."
Mm. Yeah, I can definitely see, being Earth being seeded as likely an explanation as any other. Um, I- Multiverse makes
Yeah,
sense. The math works out
I'm excited about the
on
new
it.
Doctor Strange movie.
Yeah. Um, I think part of my scientific approach for me is that I am totally comfortable with saying I don't know.
That's the big one. That's the big
you
one
know
is
and
saying,
I don't feel like I've got to fill in any blanks with some assumption about something. um,
honestly, I
I
don't
wait
know
for the
that the
answer.
world isn't flat. I don't think it probably is, but
Yeah. For some things I think the evidence is there.
right, right. No, I think that there's a high probability that the Earth is not flat, but I have not been up in the atmosphere in a while to see the curvature of the Earth, so I can't technically say that it's not.
Yeah, that's a difficult thing for people. If you haven't directly experienced it, do you believe what somebody else says?
Right. Or do you just take it on faith?
Yeah, or is the person telling you the thing qualified? What are
That's
their reasons for telling you? What are their qualifications? It's
well,
kind of a
first of
sliding
all,
scale.
I'm always suspect of people because most likely they evolved from monkeys. So right there, I gotta just be like, I don't know about it. Okay. I think we can probably we've gone a while and Zoom has not told me I need to shut this meeting down. So uh like I said, again, thank you, man, for your time and for your sharing and Godspeed to you and all you do.
Yeah, all right. Thanks very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. So I'm just gonna hit end record.
Okay.